Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of VOX VOMITUS. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, as well as Pretty Ugly and the soon-to-be-released The Japanese Box. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, Allison Martine, author of The Bourbon Books, which includes Dibs, Since September, Move On Melinda, and Climb the Salmon Ladder. Our guest today is the one, the only Sarah Stewart Taylor. Oh my gosh, Sarah Stewart Taylor, author of the Maggie D'arcy mystery series. She is here today to talk about her upcoming release, which is going to be out in about a month, A Stolen Child.
Oh, there it is.
I know. It's like we had it on from NetGalley, so
like we don't have anything to hold up because NetGalley's like digital. Yeah. Be happy you got that.
And I was happy I got that.
I was. I mean, that's how it is when you get an ARC. You're just happy to have it before anybody else. But sometimes then there are things you don't get, like the actual physical book or a cover to be like, ooh, I mean, look at the cover and the details and touch it. Does it have texture?
Yeah.
I like those things.
And
I'm happy to hold it up.
Yes. I love it. And I have your last book, The Drowning Sea. So welcome. Tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about you and then a little bit about your series.
Sure. Well, first of all, it is so great to be here. I absolutely love what you guys do. And I love the name. And as soon as Jen, I met you at Gibson's.
Yes, you were interviewing. You were interviewing my agent, Paula Mounier.
Exactly.
When her book came out.
Yeah, and it was such a pleasure.
It comes full circle now.
It comes full circle.
Great.
And so, Sarah and I had some cocktails together, and
we did.
And I was just like, you have to come on my podcast.
And I'm sitting here drinking a sparkling probiotic vinegar drink. I like I missed out. I didn't get cocktails.
They were good cocktails. They were very good cocktails.
They were really good cocktails.
Yeah, so I'm so happy to be here. I've actually been in this business for almost exactly 20 years, which dates me and makes me feel
but you're still sane and you survived
old.
it.
Well, yeah, that's debatable. But
I was just going to say, what was it like being a child author?
I was 4 when my first book was published.
I published my first mystery novel June 6th of 2003, which is crazy. And so, I was a creative writer. I majored in creative writing. In graduate school, I studied creative writing, and I'd always tried writing sort of, non-genre novels. But I love to read crime fiction. I loved mysteries. It was always sort of my go-to when I had choice in what I was reading. Even though I read
you will read this massive poem and you will like it.
Yeah, and as an English major, I mean, I read so many fantastic novels and plays and so much great poetry. And but I always loved. There were so many things I loved about the genre of crime fiction and mystery, and just the way that characters were introduced and the way that the detective character interacts with the other characters, the structure of a crime novel. I just loved all of those sort of conventions. And at some point I was struggling with a long novel that was not a mystery. And I just, as a little challenge, I said to myself, just try to write a crime novel. And I'd had a novel in my head for quite a while, since I was in college and studying abroad. Went to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And while I was there, I saw an exhibit of mourning jewelry. Jewelry associated with, funerals and traditions of grieving and mourning. And I remember thinking that would be a great occupation for a detective in a murder mystery. And so, so that was my first novel. So I wrote.
God, that gives me like chills a little bit. I'm like, why didn't I ever think of that?
Because you didn't get to visit that museum.
I know. I'm like, what a great idea.
No, but I love that it came from that. But I just wanted to ask, so you're telling me in all the stuff you did as an English major, they didn't have you read any mystery or crime novels? Because I say shame on you, English department of your alma mater.
No, I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, in high school, I know that I read some Poe, and probably someone threw an Agatha Christie in there somewhere. And
I didn't get to read Agatha Christie in any.
Yeah, like I don't remember ever being given like a mystery or like a crime novel in college to read.
Me neither.
Not in college. Yeah, I think it was more in high school, but yeah, certainly not in college. And I think like many mystery writers, somewhere along the line I got the message very strongly that that genre was not,
Genre's not,
not real literature.
That's not real writing. That's not, if you're getting an MFA, you should be a literary writer, and that's it.
And so, yeah, I think there are a lot of us who've had that experience, and you have that voice in your head. And so it took me a while to kind of, shove that voice out of the way and go for it, and really, try to write a novel that was like so many of the novels that I loved to read at that point. And so that first novel, which is called Oh, Artful Death, introduces a character named Sweeney St. George, who is a young art historian who specializes in gravestone art. So she spends all her time.
My dream career.
I was going to say, Jen's like, peace out writing. I'm going to go stare at a cemetery for a while and make etchings.
Bye.
That's what she does. And so Sweeney has red curly hair. You'll be
It is you, Jennifer.
It's me.
And yeah, so I wrote 4 novels in that series, sort of in the early 2000s, and then did some different things, including having kids, and that
takes up a little bit of time sometimes.
A little bit of
none
time.
at all.
I was doing some teaching in there, and I actually wrote a series of middle grade steampunk adventure novels, which were really
Do you write them under your name or some other name?
So they're under S.S. Taylor.
Okay, I'm going to have to find them because I have an almost middle grader, and in some districts she would be middle grade, and I think she would love that. And I have a hard time finding books for her because the books that I read are now out of print because I am older than dirt, and I don't know half the books that have come out more recently. So it's like we only know the really popular ones that everybody's reading, and half of those she's like, I don't like Harry Potter. I'm like, I'm glad. I don't want you reading Harry Potter. That's fine. Find something else that's interesting. So you and I will talk after. I'll make sure I get the full list of her reading list for the summer.
Yeah, I'll hook you up.
I love it.
Yeah, so I wrote those, but I really had in the last 7 years or so, I've wanted to get back to crime fiction, and I'd sort of always had the idea for The Mountains Wild, which is the first book in the Maggie D'arcy series. In my head, I lived in Ireland for a few years after college and went to graduate school there. And while I was living there, there was a really tragic series of disappearances of women, sort of around Dublin and outside of Dublin in the mountains. And I felt that I didn't have the right, as a non-Irish person, to write about the story sort of head on, to write this story head on. And it took me a while to figure out how to do it. And
That's a great idea, because I was just like I love that she's an American detective.
So that was sort of my way in. Ultimately, it was that I don't, I'm not Irish, but I know what it's like to be an American living in Ireland, and I can write to that. And so that was sort of my window into this character and into, what turns out to be a very complicated mystery involving a family member of Maggie's. The book starts when she is a recent college graduate, and she's working in her uncle's Irish bar on Long Island, and her beloved cousin, who's really more like a sister, goes missing in Ireland, and she goes over to try to find her. She never finds any trace of her. And 23 years later, Maggie has become a homicide detective on Long Island. She's the divorced mother of a teenage daughter, and new evidence is found in the case. And she goes back to Ireland to try to solve it once and for all. So that's really, sort of where the Maggie series came from. And as you guys
did you know when you started, did you know you wanted it to be a series, or did you think,
no,
maybe it's a standalone?
I really thought it was a standalone. I thought I had this one story I wanted to tell, and that was it. And
so what changed your mind, like getting the book deal? Like when they
basically,
said,
my
we
editor,
need 3 more.
And you said, you know what? I think I can find a few more. Hold on, I got them in my pocket.
I'm sure I have something. Yeah, no, my editor kind of said, you know, I really like this. Do you think you could write another one about her? And it took me a little while to figure out how to do it because of course, in the first book, I don't want to give anything away, but she, can you guys see me okay? My screen just went black for a minute.
No, we can see you. You're fine on our end.
Yeah.
Excellent. Everything's good now. You know, she, at the end of the first book, I had to figure out how I could sort of make Ireland a part of her life. And it was a little complicated to do it. I don't want to give anything away about how the first book ends, but it's been a challenge, but a really fun challenge. And I'm so glad that I did it because I loved exploring her character kind of through these different stories and these different things that happened to her, including in the fourth book, moving to Ireland.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so she's there now, and I've only read this fourth one, so I was like, I don't know how this homicide detective from Long Island ended up here. I'm just glad she's here, and you definitely still get that outsider vibe to her of still figuring out where she is. And there's also some, I wouldn't say demotion, but she was a detective, and she doesn't just get to transfer. I'm a detective again. She's got to work her way up, so you work that tension in too. And I like how you did that. And I won't spoil anything, but she does reference kind of what brought her there in referencing that cousin. So having not read it, I'm like, you won't spoil anything, but I know stuff because you mentioned it in the fourth book.
So have you been able to go back to Ireland since you started writing these books for research and Guinness?
Yeah, I mean, of course, right? I mean, that's been one of the, I think that's been one of the real pleasures of writing this series for me, is that I've really kind of reconnected with friends there, and just, you know, with just sort of the places I lived. I've been able to go back and visit the places I lived when I was living there, and that's just been one of the most amazing parts of writing this series. I think I've gone every other year since I started. So I'll sort of research 2 books on a couple of week research trip, and yeah, it's been great.
All writers should set their books someplace they want to go visit, because
I mean, that's true. But it's like, for those of us who maybe can't travel because we have littles, it's like, oh, I'm longing to get to do that. And one of the places, and I won't say where, there's a place I would like to go, and I could ostensibly go, and it's just like, can I justify doing this and dragging my family along and be like, but it's research, and how many of these tickets are tax accessible, because it's research for me.
It's research.
They are my research assistants.
That's right. Yeah,
I'm always torn between setting a book someplace really fantastic or my hatred of intense research and things like that. Just going, I guess I'll just set it like in my hometown because I know it.
Also, your hometown is pretty haunted. So for your genre, I mean, it's kind of like on brand to do that.
It's on brand.
Well, Sarah, and I was going to say, go ahead.
I've seen your house, Jen. You I think you've got a lot to work with right where you are.
Oh yeah, no, I like right when we saw it, I was just like, oh, this is it. We have to.
My house.
We're here.
This has to happen. I'm like, there's like a tower and a ghost and a weird attic crawl space. It has everything.
Creepy.
Mice, bears.
Yeah, you had the bears. I mean, next book cannot be about the friendship, if you want to write children's, between Tubby and the bears.
And the bears.
Tubby and the bears.
Tubby and the bears.
Well, and Sarah, earlier you said you aren't Irish, so you can't be writing that. How Irish would you have to be? And I was joking, I was not going to do my bad Irish accent, because I am Irish, but I'm only like part Irish. I'm a mutt. So it's like, I don't have enough of a connection to any culture to make fun of it, because I'm not enough of it, I guess. Right. So, but I do a very bad Irish accent that makes my children laugh, and I threaten to do it here. And I'm not going to, because I have a little bit of self-restraint. Not much, but
and then if you start doing an accent, then I'm going to do an accent, and then it's going to tumble downhill.
All bad. But I liked I could hear your characters, the ones who have Irish accents, in my head with the accent, and I appreciated like that they had that lilt to it. You could just tell in their cadence. Some characters more than others, like yeah.
And I just loved like the authenticity of your writing, like because you wrote the way Irish people speak,
Mhm.
like with like, I don't want to say strange phrases, but you know,
A couple
it's
might be
very
a little
clearly not
non-American. Let's just say that.
non-American.
Yes.
It's a real challenge because I think, you know, there's so many bad examples of Americans trying to replicate Irish accents. And there, you know, it's yeah, there's a long history there that I didn't want to recreate. And so I really tried to sort of capture a sense of Hiberno English, you know, but not go over the top, and also to be
so nobody sounds like a leprechaun.
Exactly.
They're not looking for their Lucky Charms. No,
it's, you know, just like Americans, all Irish people don't speak the same way. You know, people who live in Dublin, you know, in many ways, you know, Dublin has become so global that you know, the accent has really changed over the last sort of 20 years. And there are a lot of different regions and regional accents. And so, yeah, I always try to be really mindful of that and not to be too over the top.
A million years ago, I was doing theater and I was auditioning for a play that took place in Belfast. And the day of the auditions was just hilarious. The amount of terrible Irish accents, because people were just like, they didn't realize that the Northern Irish accent is completely different. Yeah. Everybody sounded like leprechauns. I didn't sound like a leprechaun, but I didn't sound not like a leprechaun.
You sounded like some other weird thing.
It definitely wasn't Irish.
No.
I didn't sound Irish, but...
Well, and the question then is, whoever's casting it, do they even know? Because just because they have that, I don't know if they would. And
it was the North American premiere of like this big, you know.
Okay, good. Because
it was
like, yeah, now we're replicating those stereotypes because that's what we think it should sound like. It's like,
right.
Let's not do that, please.
Yeah. So needless to say, I did not get cast in that show.
Even with your red hair and pale skin, you should have been a shoo-in.
It was a very small cast.
I'm sorry.
And again, my Irish accent was not good.
It wasn't going to do it.
No.
Well, and like you said, I mean, I think you were also consistent in your book that not all of them are going to sound the same. So as long as you're consistent within characters too, unless you specifically say this character is from this particular small town in this county, and then you give them an accent that doesn't go at all with what they should sound like. Like I have a couple characters that are from the UK region in general, and I have several friends, and I run phrases by them. I'm like, is this correct? Is this right? Does this sound right to you? And then I have Abigail and Francis tell me when I'm right or wrong. And other times I just try to picture them in my head saying the phrases and how they would sound.
Yeah.
So if I can get those phrases and those voices in my head, like authors, we're allowed to have voices in our head, and it is not something we are supposed to be ashamed of.
No, that's the whole job, right?
We're allowed to have voices in our head.
Yeah, I don't
just
think
write down the good voices.
Yes. Not the ones that are like burn things. Those we saw them.
Yeah. And to ignore the imposter syndrome voices.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. And the imposter syndrome, especially Sarah, I relate hard to the whole. And then I had kids and stuff. You know, things slow down with that, and those voices that say you have to write this way or you can't pursue this particular part. And I think imposter syndrome goes in with that because sometimes even we tell ourselves that our dreams are imposter dreams. Like, real writers go and do this, but if you want to pursue that, that's not right, and you need to pursue it this way, or the way society says it has to look this way, and everybody's dream is going to look a little different.
Yeah,
and it takes time.
I think it's so important to talk about that, because parenting and writing, you know, it's one of those things where it feels like all or nothing, right? Like people are either saying like you can't be a writer if you're a parent, or there are these like superstars who are just like, you know, they seem to churn out 5 books a year, and they're, you know, and it's like, how do they do that?
Yeah. How do they do that? How do you do that? I can't remember who we were talking to, an author who is also a mother, and she said, like, you have to believe in your book so much and believe in yourself enough that sometimes you're going to close the door on like your daughter as your daughter's like, but mommy, I love you. Nope. I have to work. Like,
well, I think that's also hard because most other professions, you have a place when you say goodbye, I love you, and you leave. And because most of us, we work from home because there is no writer office. I mean, yeah, coffee shops, but most of us work from home, which means the distractions are there and the children are there and all that. And I know for me, the first novel I had that died on sub, it took me years to get it done. And I was writing it in these small segments when my mother-in-law was watching my kid. And then when he was in preschool, all of a sudden it went from being half done to all the way done within a couple months, because I'm like, hey, look, my brain during daytime. I have one. And I didn't for about 7 years there.
Yeah, same. I mean, I had quite a long break and it was interesting. You say a book that died on sub, because I had a book that died on sub, after I'd published 4 books already. I had a book that died on sub.
But I know what happens. They're like, shh, don't say that.
But I think that's another thing that we need to talk about as writers, to be like, sometimes you write a book and
nobody likes it.
Well, and then nobody likes it.
Right. or they don't know what to do with it, because I know that like mine, it's dead-ish. It probably won't come out, but if it does, it might. I don't know. But it was one of those things where they didn't know where to put it because it didn't fit clearly in a category. And even within the few years since that has happened, some of those categories have gotten fuzzier and people are more open to, it doesn't have to be clear-cut categories. But yeah, we've talked to other authors who've said like, yeah, I had these 2 come out and then I didn't get another deal after that. And it's like people are going, well, why did you stop writing? And it's like, I didn't stop writing. The publishers stopped taking what I was doing or asked me to do something completely different. And we know authors who the publisher says, we want you to write about this. And they're like, I don't want
That's
to.
not what I write.
So they're self-publishing. And fortunately, they have the established audience now that their readers will find them and don't really care who it came from because they already know them. But if you're still starting out, you can't do that so easily.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different paths. I think that's the thing that I've realized, kind of being in this business in a few different ways for so long, that like, there are a lot of different ways to get to the same outcome, which is, I think what most people are looking for is being able to do this as a job and, having it be your job. And there really are so many different ways to get there.
And finding the readers who are looking for your books, because I think sometimes you get pushed to write something where you're like, well, this is what I'm told to write, but they're not the kind of books of your heart. And then you're like, okay, well, I have to keep doing that because now that's where my readers think I belong. So I love the readers. We joke that they are the end cap authors who they kind of shift between genres and no one really cares because the readers just like their voice and will find them whatever sides they go and don't care that they don't always fit in a clear box. Like end cap. Go.
Yep. Your sci-fi book is right there next to your funny rom-com, which is right over your literary masterpiece.
Yeah, no, that's I love when authors experiment that way and try different things, and it's always fun to see that.
Well, we love that,
but terrifying to do sometimes.
Yeah, it is, and I love that you've got a character and you've kind of shifted her now to being in Ireland and exploring that. And I'm assuming we're going to get more. I mean, assuming you don't kill off Maggie, you can just keep going and watch her climb the ranks. And then she's like, the Irish police commissioner. Is that like a thing? I don't know if they'd let an American expat do that.
She'd have to be pretty good. I mean, that would be a real challenge to make her so good that could be a possibility. We'll see.
Well, she's really relatable as a character, even if she's like, I've never been a police officer, so maybe I don't relate on that level, but she's got relationship issues as well, where she's dealing with her significant other and also kind of balancing that between what she's doing in this case. And she goes from being, and I don't think this is a spoiler, she's not a detective when this starts, and yet getting kind of drawn into something that's more detective level and it's suspecting more. And that just brings up all of us feeling like, hey, are we balancing work and life at home and what our partner expects of us? And, well, this is a great career advancement, but am I now giving them the short shrift? And
I also really like that, she's a grown-up. She's like a woman in her 40s. And leading regular life, and I'm just like, no, I know, like, it's usually like your characters are, some reason like really gorgeous 30-year-old women who are also like cops or detectives or something. And you're like,
what was it? We want to know what metabolism some of these fictional characters have, and the key is that they are fictional. Where they're like, yes, I drink wine all day and still have 6-pack abs, so that I'm like, I don't think those two things go together. Like if you drink wine all day,
wine all day, drinking like so hard, never working out.
No. I mean, their workout is laying by the pool like this.
Yeah. Or like,
and they never get
you know.
sunburned.
Yes.
That's just unfair too.
That's true. Yeah. No, I wanted someone who was, you know, who was really in it, who was living a real life where things weren't always, you know, going well and things weren't always perfect. And in the second book in particular, she's like really having a lot of parenting challenges, parenting a teenager. And it was, you know, it was really fun to kind of get into all of that and really, you know, really get away from that kind of, as you said, that sort of like picture perfect view of somebody's life. And actually a lot of readers have told me that they liked that a lot, that they, you know, that she felt like a real person. And
oh, she did. Well, one of the other things that I don't think this is a spoiler because it comes out pretty soon, so in the book, one of the characters has worked as a model and been on a reality modeling show. And I was just like, yes, it's America's Next Top Model. But I was eating that stuff.
I loved it too. I'm just like, I want to watch that show.
Oh, seriously. And they're like, some of it's fake because they were just told to be like this and they weren't really best buddies, but then they act like they are. And I love that whole aspect. And I mean, I know that for me, I shouldn't admit to having watched America's Next Top Model for as many seasons as I did. And longing for that one season where they had the short girls on and they're like, yes, short is anything under 5'8", and still like the 5'7.5" girls won. I'm like, the real short girls never get a chance.
And they also had a season with like a plus size model or a few of them, and she was like still tiny. And I'm like, that's not a plus size model. That's like, she's smaller than me.
I know, like their plus size is like compared to someone who's naturally built like, well, here we go. Here's what most of their models look like. Put hair on it.
Yeah. It was so much fun to create. I wanted to create like a failed reality show. You know, the whole point was like, it was canceled after a season. And so that was really fun actually to, you know, I watched some shows and
okay, tell us your research. What were you watching? What were you binging? What were you sitting there, the popcorn?
Oh God. Now I to be honest, like the names of them all kind of run together, right? So there's like America's Top Model, Next Top Model, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then
which was like the OG modeling show.
Yes,
like,
yes, because then there were ones after. There
was a British one as well that had a very similar name, like, you know, the UK's Top Model or something. Yeah. That I watched a little bit of, and there was an Irish reality show, not about models, but about sort of like young, like socialites about town.
Like just going to bars.
Yes,
wearing high heels
for the kind of like Irish specific cultural references. I can't even remember what that show was called. I'll have to look it up again.
You'll have to tell us later because I love those. I mean, I haven't watched as many of them, but one of my favorite shows, and I'm always telling people, go find the show. And I think we watched it on Hulu, but it might not have been, was Unreal. And I don't know if you've heard of that show, but it's a scripted show, but it's all told from the point of view of the people who are producing the show. And it is just so raw and mean and ugly. And just what they do to these people, it's like starve them and give them lots of alcohol to see what happens. And, you know, they're totally twisting things and bad stuff happens repeatedly, but it's a good show. It's like, I enjoyed those more than the shows that they're actually making fun of. Because that one's supposed to be kind of like Bachelor based.
Right.
So there is that. So go find Unreal.
Okay. All right. I gotta go look for it.
But it's definitely a dark show. It does not have the light, fun humor that you might have when you're watching some of these reality shows where you're just watching train wrecks, but they're not usually too bad of a train wreck. They're just people going, ah, and then you get the meme of the girls and the cat. Yeah, I love that meme.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
It's fun. Yeah, it was fun to write that aspect of it. It was.
What made you decide you were going to go with a model as one of your main characters?
You know, it's funny. I knew that. So a lot of it was actually the location. So I wanted to pick a neighborhood in Dublin that was kind of, that had sort of a long history and a really interesting long history. But it was also kind of a gentrifying neighborhood where there would be some interesting tensions. And a few Irish friends really helped me with kind of like, which neighborhood would it be? And I ended up picking a neighborhood called Portobello.
Which I hear and think mushroom. but that's not right.
No. And it's, pretty centrally located city neighborhood. And there are kind of, they're like recording studios and like hipster bars and there's this
and abandoned lots where people smoke cigarettes and
and stare into windows that aren't theirs.
It had that feeling a little bit that I was going for. And so then I started thinking about, okay, so who's my victim? I knew that there would be a young mother who would be the victim and that her child would
not you, spoiler, she's the victim.
And it happens in the first chapter, so it's not really
in the first chapter.
And it's your book, you can do it. I'm just teasing.
I can spoil as much as I so then I started really kind of thinking like, okay, who would she be? And I was in Ireland and spent some time in that neighborhood, and there was like I think I saw a reference to a modeling agency or something, and it just got the gears going in my head. And then it was like, okay, so who is she and where does she live and who are her friends and how, and it kind of came out of that.
Well, and one of the other things you captured, and I won't say too much about it, I'll just say how I thought it was done really well, is the moms who have nothing in common, but you have children who are getting along, and therefore you are the new best friends. Because I feel like that's kind of a weird thing that happens when you have children is in other aspects, you might be thrown together because like you work together or you're college roommates and maybe you wouldn't have naturally connected, but there's that extra layer when it's like, well, our children get along. So I guess we're soulmates now because our children do. So anything in common? We'll figure it out. And I loved that mom friendship there.
Yeah, that's such a sort of fixture of that part of your life that it's like if your kid is happy for 2 hours playing with some other kid, like you'll hang out with anybody. You don't care. Like,
exactly.
Like, you could be the worst person in the world, and if your kid likes their kid and leaves you alone for a couple hours, and so it was fun to explore that a little bit and kind of think about her friendship and a real friendship. I mean, there's a real friendship there. They do really like each other, although they really
do.
But
on paper, it doesn't
you're
look
going,
like
these two.
Yeah.
They don't seem to, but I mean, I think that you handled it just beautifully. And I know that I've had certain friendships where like I get along with the mom, but the kids don't get along. So it's like, oh, so
I guess we'll never see each other again.
Exactly. I guess we can't be friends now. And then others where it's like, oh, they really get along. So I'll have to figure out a way to find that connection, and it's kind of a weird thing you have to do sometimes, but it ends up really opening you to people that maybe you wouldn't have given a chance to otherwise because they don't have those surface level connections. And then maybe you find things deeper about yourselves that you do connect with. So thank you, children, for making us have to grow as humans, which I don't want to do. I'm just kidding.
No.
I don't want to grow as a human. No, but I loved how you handled that aspect of it because I think you handled that new mother isolation just so well. And I think it's something that you don't often see in books because usually, like we said, if the person is 23 and really hot, they probably don't have that to go through. Or we've also seen a lot where the mothers are like Maggie's character. She doesn't have that going on for herself because her child is old enough to have a boyfriend. So, she's almost grown up and out the door. But that idea of, okay, right after you have a kid and you're figuring out who you are as a mother and trying to figure out what this child needs. And then is there any support? And your character there, she didn't have a whole lot in the way of support. Right. And you really handled that beautifully because I think that's really relatable to a lot of moms. My mom died just before my eldest daughter was born. And I made mom friends later, but I didn't have any right out the gate. And it was a very isolating time. And sometimes you hear, oh, well, dealing with something like handling postpartum depression, and that's a huge thing too. But even without that, it can still be a very isolating weird time when you're like, it's just me and this being that kind of screams,
cries all the time.
I know.
I never sleep.
I get into it. Yeah.
And you will never sleep again, honestly. But yours are like your youngest is 12, so maybe you're sleeping. I don't know.
My kids are sleeping now, but we have right now on our farm. We're in the middle of lambing. We raise sheep, and we're right in the middle of lambing. And so I have been.
I want to see pictures. I want video.
Up every night last week. And so it's funny, but it'll be over in another week. So it's nice. I get to experience that. Like,
what's the lambing season? How long does it go?
So generally it lasts like 2 to 3 weeks. That they're all, all the lambs are born within like 2 to 3 weeks. So I'm hoping for 2 weeks this year. I think it will be. I only have 4 ewes left to go. So
Sarah, we didn't ask where are you in these mythical lambs?
So we live in Vermont. We're up in Vermont, and
okay. I mean, if you're close enough that you would be at Gibson's, I figured you were somewhere in that area. And these lambs are these lambs that we raise for wool, for sheep's milk, for entertainment value.
I know, for baby lamb yoga.
Seriously, lamb yoga.
There's no yoga. I spend enough time on the ground with with the lamb. It's not very clean down there in our barn.
No. Well, I did goat yoga once, and that's not even a clean process because goats do, like, they get excited, they're jumping on you, and then they poop all over your yoga mat.
I was gonna say, like, the goats aren't wearing diapers or they're just goats.
No. They're just pooping everywhere.
They poop everywhere.
Like, as a sheep farmer and someone who spent time with goats, has never made any sense to me. I have no idea who came up with it. It seems like a sort of scam on city people. And I've done it.
I'll connect with nature, and nature connects with you, all right.
It connected all over my cute yoga pants. It connected all and what's so funny is, like, the room is filled with, like, staff as well that, like, they run over and clean up the poop and the pee right away. But it's not relaxing because you're, like, trying to stretch, and then the goat pees on you. Yeah. And then, like, somebody, like, runs over and is like, sorry, and, like, wiping you up. And I'm like, I'm tense right now.
I mean, I love whenever we go to zoos that have the petting areas, like they have lovely ones and you get to pet the goats and stuff, but you're not on the ground with them. They know better than to do that. Well, and then Sarah, when you were talking to Paula, were you talking about A Wedding Plot? Was that the book you were interviewing her about?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, because I know that she rejected my alternative idea of The Goat Cheese Murders as the title. She's like, that is not the title of my book. I'm like, I know it could have been because there are goats in that book too. And I'm like,
it's a very New England thing.
I know. I was going to say, Sarah, were your questions then related to the authenticity of the goat portions? As a lamb expert, I'm going to call you out on these parts. Did you do your goat research?
Sheep, which is better? We had
I will tell you, there is a song I know that is called "Goats" or "The Sheep Go to Heaven, Goats Go to Hell." I wish I was making that up, but I am not. It is. Yeah. It's based on a Bible verse, like, "Oh, the sheep go this way, and the goats depart from me," and all that. And it's like, what did the goats ever do to you, Jesus? That's just terrible. I love goats.
I will tell you, goats are. Anyone who's had goats can tell you that goats are very. They make a lot of trouble.
That's why they go to hell.
They'll destroy cars. Like if you have a car parked in your driveway and a goat gets out, they'll like destroy the car. They get
doing what?
And make the car.
Yeah, they just want to jump on everything.
They're just partying. Jump.
They eat everything too. They'll eat. They like eat the sides of people's houses away, and they're pretty.
Because they always would tell you when you go into like the petting zoo, they're like, don't have anything out because they will eat your map, they will eat your tickets, they will eat your money. So make sure there isn't anything that they can just do.
Yeah. So my yoga mat that was pooped and peed on has a big bite taken out of it now because the goat ate that, and we were required to like cover our hair completely because when we were down on the ground,
eating your hair.
Oh yeah. And my hair wasn't completely covered, but it was like in a bun, and it was like two of them were like pulling, and I'm like,
you guys, I think we have like single-handedly destroyed the goat yoga industry tonight. They're going to come after us because we have made it sound like the most.
But here's the thing
ever.
What's funny is I thought it was gross and not relaxing, but it was also cute, and I would probably do it again.
Yeah, it's like go into it with
I would
right
definitely do it again.
Like I wouldn't go trying to do yoga. I would go trying to play with a goat. And if they're like, you're supposed to be doing yoga, I'm like, I'm playing with a goat over here, and you let me.
My husband legitimately didn't even try to do the yoga. He was like holding the goats, taking selfies with the goats.
That's what I would be doing too. And I was going to say, if any goat industry is mad at me, I can be easily bribed by sending me lots of chèvre because I adore goat cheese. And I've talked to my husband about, could we have a goat? And he reminds us that we have like, the only lawn we have is about this big and it's in front of the house beyond our gate. So it would be like goat in the street. So not in our current living situation, but I love those. And I don't think I'm cut out to raise farm animals, but I like playing with them at zoos.
All right, goat cheese farmers. There's a product placement opportunity here.
Yeah. We will accept sponsorship by any and all goat cheese.
Like any cheese, anything actually.
I mean, pretty much, and not craft singles. I mean, that's first off, that's not cheese.
No.
Second, cheese. They don't.
If that's
they aren't looking to sponsors. No, actually, craft singles do. The best thing they're for is for a basic, really, really basic grilled cheese sandwich. But I prefer mine to have white cheddar with some tomato. And again, if I could have goat cheese, I would do that.
So Sarah, before we end today, can you tell us what you're working on now? I mean, I'm assuming
Absolutely.
It's the next Maggie book.
So I am working on the next
book number
Maggie
5.
I'm working on Maggie 5, and I'm in the very beginning stages of it. And I'm actually finishing up. So the book that I wrote this year is the first book in a new series.
New series.
I'm excited about it. So, and my hope is that I will sort of be able to go back and forth between the two series, which I love the idea of kind of switching and keeping things fresh. And I think it helps. It helps each of the series to like spend a little time away and do something kind of.
Yeah, I was going to say it would probably help you with burnout to be able to explore other characters for a little bit and then come back. And then it's like visiting old friends. Like,
exactly. Yeah. And it's fun to like miss your characters, I think, and kind of want to go back. So, but the new series I'm working on is set in 1965. So it's sort of near historical. And it's set in Vermont, which has been so much fun. So I'm, instead of having to fly across the Atlantic, when I need details or I want to see how something looks, I can just go drive around. And
I was gonna say your state's not even that big, so you don't have that far to go.
It's not. It's easy to do. So so I'm having so much fun with that. I'm almost.
So is that going to come out next June?
So so hopefully we don't have a date yet, but we'd shoot for June of 2024.
And I was going to say, I do think that counts as historical because we had an author on who wrote a book that was based on her own life, like loosely, and it was set in the 60s. And they're like, it's historical romance. And she's like, how dare you? That was my life.
That was my life. I did not live in historical fiction times.
Is like the 70s. And I know that we still do a lot of 80s stuff and it feels like nostalgia, or if it's written in the 90s. And sometimes we do that all only because it feels like, especially for things like mysteries, because you get away from everybody has a cell phone, it makes it easier to be like, there was someone off the grid or whatever because they didn't have a cell phone. But I do.
And people can be missing for longer because you can't just call them.
Yeah, find my phone, find my friend. Yeah, I wonder if officially where the line starts of this is historical versus this is just kind of playing to the audience's nostalgia. I don't know the line.
The term that I've heard used for these sort of recent historicals is near historical. So, and I think that covers kind of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. Hopefully the 90s aren't considered historical yet.
For my own life, I don't want to think about that.
I don't want to think about that. But 60s, 70s, 80s, near historical. And it's been so much fun because I was born in 1971. So it's like, it feels like I'm like researching kind of what the world was like just as I came into it, if that makes sense. And it's
right. Because even if you were alive right then, you were like, well, I was a toddler and I don't really know what was going on right there. So it's not like you're like, yes, this is my lived experience. Like you were in a stroller. You don't really know.
You were just being pushed around a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's been so much fun. So I'm really excited about that series. And I'll, as we get more details, I'll definitely share them with you guys.
Yes, please. And you'll have to come back too.
And there might be goat cheese in it. I don't know.
You could add some in.
Definitely. There's sheep. There are a lot of sheep in this book. A lot of cows, some horses, and
can you write off all your own lambs then as tax expenses? Like I was watching them to know how to write them. I'm an
Yeah,
author.
that's an interesting idea. I'm going to have to suggest that to our accountant and see if it's
Just see
I may
if
allow
that has legs.
Tell them that
Hypothetically.
some California non-practicing lawyer told you to at least look into the possibility. This is not legal advice. It's just
all right.
talk
Excellent.
to professionals about the lambs.
That's a fair chance.
Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
It was so much fun to talk to you guys.
It was great. And we loved the book. So everybody who's watching this live, watching it on the replay, listening to it, make sure you check out, yes, A Stolen Child,
And
or
while you're
any
waiting,
of the other.
get the first ones.
Get the first
June
ones.
20th. Yeah, June 20th. And the
June
others
20th.
are available now. Yeah.
You can get all caught up. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Bye.